Hey friends, Ann here
And I'm Gracie.
with Little Things Big Difference, the place where you can find little things that make a big difference in your life. And today we are talking about how to let go of bitterness. Gracie, it's a good thing that neither of us have any bitterness in our lives, right?
Yeah, I've never experienced bitterness
Yeah.
before, so I'm just bye.
Yeah, just one time. Just one time.
Yeah, so okay, we'll go ahead with the example here. Yes. I unfortunately have experienced bitterness a time or two, maybe. I remember there was this one time, I tell you, it just like really bothers me and makes me experience a whole lot of bitterness when people talk down to me
Yes.
or kind of in a condescending way, even if they're trying to be nice.
Exactly.
And they say things in a condescending way. I remember there was this one time I was leading worship locally here, and a friend of mine came up to me and was just telling me, patting me on the back and telling me how good of a job I did and how good I've gotten and how I've come so far. And I'm like, your words sound really nice, but I just know the intent is just to be a little cynical or whatever. And so I definitely can remember the feeling of that bitterness there for sure. So, Ann, what about you?
So for me, in my marriage, early on in our marriage, when Corey and I first got married, I just thought that Corey should automatically know the things that I wanted him to do. Like somehow marriage just enabled you to read each other's minds
It
or
doesn't?
something. I guess it doesn't because it didn't work.
Yeah.
And what I would do was I would have these expectations of Corey, and then he wouldn't do it, and then I would get bitter and I would get angry with him, and it just kind of festered in my heart. And I found that not only was I bitter at him, but it like seeped into the rest of my life, and I found myself bitter at other people as well.
Yeah.
And then I found myself getting bitter at people who weren't meeting expectations on the job, or bitter about, other people that weren't reading my mind, which is ridiculous. But I found that it just kind of seeped into every aspect of my life. And it wasn't until I woke up to the realization of what that bitterness was doing to me that I was like, oh, I've got to do something about this.
Yeah.
So what about for you guys? How has bitterness kind of taken over your life? Or are you wondering, am I bitter? Like, is that what's going on inside of me? So I've got a couple of indicators that you can use to identify if you are bitter and if you're holding on to that. The first one is, are you holding on to grudges? Are you holding on to things that people have done against you, and then you continue to try to use that as a weapon against them? That probably comes from a place of bitterness. Are you generalizing? Are you thinking like all or nothing? Well, everybody does this, or nobody does this, or nobody cares about me, or everybody disrespects me. That's a sign that it might be coming from a place of bitterness. Do you have a hard time receiving advice from other people? So this is when people are trying to be helpful, but you assume that they have your worst interest at heart. And so you find yourself pushing back against that advice. So refusing advice is a sign of bitterness. Are you just annoyed when people seem happy and joyful? Like all of a sudden you're like, you look at this person that seems carefree and happy, and you just think, oh, they are so naive, they are so inexperienced. And does their happiness get on your nerves? That probably comes from a place of having some bitterness. Or this last one, do you find yourself jealous and envious of other people? That often comes from a root of bitterness inside your heart. So the first thing is to identify, am I bitter? And then you begin to say, okay, what am I going to do about it now? So bitterness is often something we use as a weapon against other people, or we think it is, but that weapon actually turns around and gets used against us because it just really eats us up from the inside out.
Yeah, and a lot of times this bitterness that we're talking about, it comes out in either one of two ways. It comes out in silence or it comes out in violence.
Yeah.
And when it comes out in silence, it's when we tend to stuff these things down, and when we don't kind of deal with it when it's right in front of you. And a lot of times we'll stuff that down because we feel helpless and we don't feel like we can control the situation. And then that stuffing turns to anger, and then that anger leads to bitterness. And and then the other way that it can come out is in violence, and not in physical violence, but in verbal violence.
Yeah.
And, that can come out in sarcasm and cynicism and criticism. We feel like we can't control the situation that's in front of us. And so we feel like we want to blame the other person for our hurt. Yeah. And so then we want to make them feel as bad about themselves as we feel in the moment from the situation that's going on. Yeah. And so, either one of those two ways is how a lot of times we see bitterness come out in people.
Yeah. So when you recognize these signs of bitterness, there are 4 strategies that I'm going to give you to try. The first one is this. First of all, regain control. And what I'm talking about is not trying to make things happen, but it's regaining control of your own emotions and your own thoughts, realizing that you are not a victim of the other person. And then the second one is this: be grateful. Start looking for a new thing. We see what we seek, and a lot of times if we're looking for things to be bitter about, that's what we're going to see. But if we're looking for things to be grateful for, then that's what we're going to see. And you'll notice that when you see things that you have to be grateful for, it starts to shift your heart and your mind in a new direction. And then the third one is be compassionate. Sometimes people just unknowingly do things that they don't meet our unsaid expectations, maybe, or they do things out of kind of a skewed kind of kindness. And so it's important for us to just respond to that with compassion and to say, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt. Or even if you did intend to be condescending and sarcastic to me, I'm going to choose to be compassionate to you. Yeah. And then the fourth strategy is this: be content. Be content with what you have. Comparison is the thief of joy, and comparison steals your joy and it makes you bitter. So love what you have. Love what you do. Be content with where you are and all that you have.
Yeah, that's so good. And if you've experienced any bitterness and have had the opportunity to try these strategies that Ann just told us about, we would love to hear from you in the comments about how this has made a difference in your life. And for more little things that make a big difference, be sure to like this video and to subscribe to our channel, Little Things Big Difference, so that you don't miss any upcoming episodes. And be sure to join us as well on Facebook and Instagram at The Chapel Online. And we look forward to hearing about how this has made a big difference in your life.